Welcome to the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee, I-900 Performance Audits by State Auditor's Office Subcommittee. This is a public hearing where I am chair of the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, Jerry Paulette, and we are hearing the state auditor's presentation of two recent reports, State Auditor's Office Cybersecurity Update for Fiscal Year 2025, including opportunities to improve IT security at local governments and opportunities to improve state information security. These are very important audits for improving the security of IT at state and local governments. Staff from the State Auditor's Office will give a presentation of their recent performance audits. The audits being discussed at this hearing were conducted solely and independently by the State Auditor's Office under the authority of legislation approved by the voters in Initiative 900, I-900. The state auditor is elected directly by the people of the state of Washington and prepares and operates independently of the legislature and the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee. JLARC members attending virtually can let me know during the presentation if they have questions using raise hand. And after the SAO's presentation, agency staff will provide comments on the audit reports, and members have an opportunity to ask them questions. We will take public testimony after the presentation. Staff have supplied information on registering for in-person and remote public testimony via Zoom on the JLARC website. I don't think anyone signed up in advance, but we can take public testimony here in person. And it's a reminder that the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee hears the independent audits by the state auditor. Unlike the audits performed by the JLARC staff, we don't formally adopt these because the state auditor is an independent state constitutional office, and they present their audits to this committee. So joining me today is Representative Scott and our state legislative auditor, Eric Thomas. And with that, we'd like to ask the staff of the state auditor's office to come up and present the reports. They will introduce themselves and we'll take it away. And again, let us know if you would prefer to stop and ask if there are questions about the state and local separately, or just do them all together.
Together? Yeah.
And welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I naturally talk loud, so I'll try to talk quieter or louder depending on how the microphone is going. Just give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down, louder, quieter. All right, good afternoon. Thank you, board chair and other members and staff of the committee for inviting us back again this year to talk about our annual audit reports. I am Stephen, a cybersecurity auditor at SAO, and with me today is Quinn, a cybersecurity assistant audit manager. First, we'd like to thank the IT management and staff of all the state agencies and local governments that we audited this year. They took time away from their daily responsibilities to respond to our requests, demonstrating a dedication to improving their organization's IT security. We'd also like to thank WATEC for their continued partnership and support in the technical aspects of the state agency testing. Today, we're going to present our annual cybersecurity audit reports for state agencies and local governments covering fiscal year 2025. We're going to start by talking about the core portfolio of our audits. Then we'll dig into the details of the state and local government reports. And we'll end with additional cybersecurity related services offered by our office. I want to start with some important background information on our audits. Number one, confidentiality is key. As you can see on the screen, there is an RCW that allows us to keep certain information confidential. details such as the specific vulnerabilities and recommendations given to specific entities. We only give those details specifically to the entity staff with a need to know, and we give a higher level overview to the other entity staff and governing body members. There is an exception for some state agencies where certain members of WATEC do have a need to know. In addition, out of an abundance of caution, we do not disclose any names of state agencies or local governments. So you will not see or hear any names in our reports or in this presentation. The delivery of the detailed audit results are given directly to the entity staff with a need to know as soon as it is completed. So for example, as soon as we have the final penetration testing recommendations, we give them to the auditee. As soon as we finish our patch scan analysis, we give it to the auditee, so on and so forth. We don't wait until the end of the audit because cyber attacks happen in real time and they aren't going to wait until the end of our audit to resume. And due to the ever-changing cyber threat landscape, we have found that overall, all governments have room for improvement in their IT practices. Luckily, once we deliver our audit results, we have found a consistent drive from our auditees to improve their areas of weakness and implement as many of our recommendations as feasible. Protecting IT systems and data is as important today as ever before. Attackers continue to use ransomware to cripple organizations, like the state of Nevada currently with the incident that they are dealing with. Social engineering has been empowered with the use of AI, and there's continued focus on trying to cripple our nation's critical infrastructure. So to help address these threats, our office started conducting cybersecurity audits back in 2013. And in that time, we have conducted 61 local government and 46 state agency cybersecurity audits. In addition, we started up 2 additional audit types for critical infrastructure and ransomware resiliency. Those are more narrow in scope, allowing us to assist more governments while still providing a significant value. For those audits, we have completed 83 critical infrastructure and 9 ransomware resiliency audits. Starting with our state agency audit report for fiscal year 2025. These audits were completed at 7 state agencies this year, and they follow 2 basic lines of work. The first one is comparing IT practices to the Center for Internet Security Critical Security Controls version 8. The critical security controls are made up of 153 individual safeguards or actions that an organization can take to improve their cybersecurity. So for example, Safeguard 1.1 is to create an inventory of your hardware assets because it is very hard to protect something that you don't know exists. That's the first line of work. The second line of work is to perform a penetration test of their key applications and their network from both an internal and external perspective. The individual safeguards that are assessed on each audit are scoped independently for each agency based on a number of factors such as size, maturity, and risk specific to said agency. On average, we audit around 30 safeguards per government. So for the little thing there, for the 7 state agencies that we audited this year, we found that nearly 1/3 of the safeguards assessed were fully implemented on all systems, and 61% of the safeguards assessed were fully implemented on at least some systems. I said that wrong. Moving on to the penetration testing results. Across the 7 state agencies, we identified a total of 227 vulnerabilities, with 3 of those rated as critical and 21 rated as high. Together, those represent the most severe vulnerabilities and the largest threats to the agencies. Luckily, the agencies have informed us that they either have fixed or have fixes in progress for these most severe vulnerabilities. Switching focus over to our local government report. For the fiscal year 2025, we completed 7 cybersecurity safeguard audits, 6 ransomware resiliency audits, and 39 critical infrastructure audits, for a total of 52 local audits. Starting with the local cybersecurity audit report, audits. we completed 7 local government audits, and these worked functionally the same as the state agency audits. We followed the 2 lines of work. Number 1, comparing IT practices to the Center for Internet Security version 8, and number 2, performing a penetration test of their network and key applications. Same as the state agency audits, the individual safeguards are scoped uniquely for each agency or each government based on factors unique to them. And for the 7 local governments that we completed audits on this year, we found that nearly a quarter of the assessed safeguards were fully implemented on all systems. And 51% of the assessed safeguards were fully implemented on at least some systems. Moving to the penetration testing results. Across the 7 local governments, we found nearly 300 vulnerabilities, including 9 rated as critical and 47 rated as high. Fortunately, we found a consistent drive across our auditees to address the critical vulnerabilities immediately and the high vulnerabilities rapidly as well. I will now pass the presentation over to Quinn to finish talking about our local government audit report and cover the additional services offered by SAO.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. As he mentioned, my name is Quinn Peralta. I'm an IT Security Assistant Audit Manager on our Cybersecurity Audit team at the Washington State Auditor's Office. For this portion of the presentation, I'll cover the work that our office has completed for the ransomware resiliency audits in addition to our critical infrastructure audits. After that, we'll go over some kind of overall trends that we've seen since we began this work, and we'll also go into some additional cyber-related resources and services that our office provides. All right, so since 2021, the Washington State Attorney General's Office breach report continues to highlight ransomware as the leading cause of data breaches within Washington State. This exposes not only citizens of Washington, but also visitors to increased risk of identity theft if they are included in those breaches. Acknowledging this risk, SAO developed audit criteria using content from the Stop Ransomware Guide that was published by the Joint Ransomware Task Force. And essentially what this is a consistent set of 22 safeguards that we look at for each organization in addition to some in-house technical testing. We began piloting this effort in March of 2023, and we've completed a total of 6 ransomware resiliency audits within the last fiscal year. And this continues to be a very attractive audit type for our clients as they're shorter in duration due to not including penetration testing like we saw with the audits before, but also because they're targeted at that very specific and very prominent risk that these locals are facing. To further simplify these engagements, we use a 3-tier alignment scale for our assessments, which ranges from fully in place to partially in place to not in place. Across the 6 governments that we included in this last fiscal year, we noticed that about 35% of or a little over 35% of the safeguards that we assessed were not in place, versus conversely, about 60%, a little over that percentage, were at least partially in place. So at least 63% had at least some meaningful action taken in that safeguard area. The silver lining in all of this is that the governments were very interested in the audit results and the recommendations, and they continue to make improvements to their IT security posture. The next work that I'd like to talk about are our critical infrastructure audits, which are another one of our newest audit offerings for our clients. In response to federal advisories that were coming out in early 2022, we began these very narrowly scoped audits geared towards local governments that provide critical services such as water providers, medical service providers, transportation, and so on and so forth. Over this last year, though, our team ramped up this work on the critical infrastructure audit specifically by working with the Department of Health to identify over 250 of Washington's largest water providers throughout the state to ensure that we were hitting those organizations that had the largest impact. After multiple rounds of outreach to that pool of local governments, we were able to onboard and complete engagements for 39 critical infrastructure audits for governments that are interested in improving their cyber resilience for those specific services. Each local government that received a critical infrastructure audit received an external penetration test in addition to an interview with our IT security specialist to really dig into those controls that are around those critical services areas. And I do want to note we specifically approached the penetration testing from an external perspective so that we as auditors could identify those low-hanging fruit items that may be present for essentially anyone with an internet connection. So a nation-state actor that's halfway across the world, what would they be able to see just by connecting up to the internet? What may make this local government more attractive to breach than say somebody else? This year, we completed a total of 39 critical infrastructure audits for governments that provide water and sewer services, which continue to be highlighted as a federal priority. Overall, penetration testing identified over 260 vulnerabilities, where a little over 10% of those were marked as critical or high, meaning that they pose increased risk to the organization and should be addressed as soon as possible. One most notable impact that these audits have made to Washington State and the nation as a whole was on an application that's used to monitor and control water technology components. During our research, we were able to engage with a vendor that we found supported multiple governments within Washington, but also multiple governments throughout the U.S. as a whole. As a result of the penetration testing that we were able to do, the vendor then reported a significant improvement to the IT security for all customers using that platform. This was then further emphasized, the importance of that was then further emphasized by the EPA and CISA when they released a joint advisory the following week, highlighting that same recommendation that we provided as part of the pen test. And while this is one instance where SAO has made a very positive impact both locally and nationwide, we continue to receive overwhelmingly positive results and just feedback from our audit clients, both directly to us and to the greater IT community. Next, I want to cover some common themes that we see across these audits that we've mentioned. Since we first started this work, we've seen an increased emphasis on cyber initiatives at the executive level, which has led to an upward trend in the implementation of those best practices. Governments, on average, have a greater understanding of cybersecurity and tend to have a greater interest in wanting to improve their cybersecurity posture than what we've seen in the past. And this is evidenced by increased alignment with those assessment of when we're looking at leading practices. However, I do want to note that there is still considerable need for guidance and resources in this area to help build and direct those cybersecurity programs. Overall, what we've seen is that agencies and entities that have a dedicated cybersecurity person or folks that are returning for their next cybersecurity audit tend to have stronger security controls in place. And that's further emphasized kind of when you're comparing state and local agencies or state agencies versus local governments, because state agencies will typically have more robust controls than what we see at local governments, in part due to the staffing that they have available to address those priorities. Conversely, governments without a dedicated cybersecurity staff, on the other hand, tend to see lower alignment in their assessments and more vulnerabilities on their pen test. And what we see in these cases is usually they have at least one IT operation person that is very passionate about cybersecurity, or we see sometimes local governments putting too much reliance on a managed service provider to do the right thing. And the reliance on these very few individuals can lead these local governments at additional risk for staffing turnover or just general improper implementation as IT initiatives have to compete with other cyber initiatives. And the next line of work I want to cover are our cybersecurity checkups. So our cybersecurity checkups are performed by our Center for Government Innovation. The center has built and maintained the hashtag #BeCybersmart campaign for a few years now. And the goal of this program is to provide resources, training, and technical advice to local governments to help improve those cyber resources, or to improve their cybersecurity rather. Since we began the cyber checkup program in the spring of 2023, we've completed 82 checkups at local governments. And as we complete this work, we continue to share the resources with them and to help improve their policies and processes around cybersecurity. Along the same vein of policies, because IT policies are the foundation of any strong cybersecurity program, the center continues to release updates to its policy guides to help governments create effective IT policies that really drive home the point that cybersecurity is everyone's job, not just executive leadership, but it's also individual staff members as well as vendors too. As mentioned before, SAO's newest resource is our cybersecurity policy guide from the center, as we have noted here on the slide. But we also have other teams that perform cybersecurity related work, such as the security attestation engagements that we perform with state agencies, in addition to the fraud and essentially financial loss follow-up work that includes a cyber component. Members from our team will also help out with kind of further investigation on those matters too. We have our contact information here available on the slide if you have any questions after the presentation or if anything comes to mind. But that pretty much concludes everything that Stephen and I have to share today, and we'd be happy to address any questions that you have.
Thank you. Let's ask Ralph Johnson, State Chief Information Security Officer with WTS, to come up, and then we'll take questions for everyone together. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. Washington Technology Solutions appreciates the work of the State Auditor's Office in conducting these fiscal audits for state agencies and local governments. The audits underscore the importance of safeguarding the IT systems that these agencies and entities rely on to deliver essential services to residents, encompassing areas of public safety, transportation, social services, tax collection, and all other services provided by government entities. The urgency of this work cannot be overestimated. Nationally, government systems continue to be under sustained and escalating attack. Research shows that ransomware incidents against governments nationwide or worldwide grew more than 3 times. If you look at the period of May 2023 to April 2024, there were 95 ransomware incidents nationally. Same time period from 2024 to 2025, we saw 322 incidents against government entities. That's a 236% year-to-year growth. While the direct financial losses of a single breach sometimes can be calculated, what can't be calculated is the loss of public trust in these governmental institutions. In the 2025 audits highlight areas where Washington must continue improving. These audits not only identified vulnerabilities through penetration testing, as was mentioned, but also measure agency practices against nationally recognized benchmarks, such as the Center for Internet Security Controls. And in the case of Washington state agencies, these also align to the Washington state policies and standards. State Auditor's Office assessed agency practices against these controls. Statewide, okay, sorry, I lost my place. Our policies also align to additional frameworks, such as the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Cybersecurity Framework, and their special publication 853. These performance audits are conducted at no cost to the state and local governments. It's an important factor to these agencies because in many cases, especially many of your smaller local entities, would not be able to accommodate such an audit without the services provided by the State Auditor's Office. These audits reflect the commitment to accountability and transparency. While agencies have made important progress, the report identifies opportunities to improve in the areas of prioritizing and remediating the most critical security vulnerabilities. It also points out that as the technology and threat landscape changes, updated policies, standards, and procedures to align to leading practices such as the Center for Internet Security Controls, National Institute of Technology and Standards and Technology, Cybersecurity Framework, and Special Publication 853, and others is essential. Continuously evaluate staffing and technical controls and resources to maintain strong defenses against evolving threats. These are all critical factors that are uncovered in these audits. WATEC and our partner agencies are already acting. Federal and local cybersecurity grant program dollars have been pivotal with the reauthorization now under consideration in Congress. The continuation of this program will enable Washington to maintain momentum. Over the past 2 years, Washington State has leveraged more than $11 million in federal and state cybersecurity grant funds in support of over 200 projects statewide. Covering local governments, educational institutions, tribes, special service districts, and state agencies. Building on that momentum, current initiatives include things such as expanding enterprise-wide monitoring and detection capabilities to identify risks in real time, strengthening incident response protocols and increasing cybersecurity training, and modernizing security standards and policies to match industry best practices, and developing a sustainable resource and staffing model to ensure security capabilities keep pace with threats. Cybersecurity isn't a one-time investment. It demands continual vigilance and adaptation. Just as we invest in physical infrastructure and protections, we must continue to invest in digital infrastructure and security controls to protect Washingtonians. The continued support from the legislature to sustain this program is appreciated. This support includes ensuring funding for core cybersecurity operations, continued access to federal match programs, and updating statewide security policies and threats as threats evolve. Finally, Initiative 900 ensures independent performance audits at no cost to audited local governments, educational institutions, and state agencies, reinforcing the accountability that this committee expects. With the support of the legislature, the governor's office, and our agency partners, WATEC is committed to advancing the improvements. Sorry. They just stuck together. The improvements identified in these audits and ensuring Washington information systems remain resilient, secure, and worthy of our public trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. No one's online. So, Representative Scott, do you have any questions? I have a couple of questions, both for SAO and Mr. Johnson. My first question is in regard to our responsibility as a legislature. When you have identified critical or high threats, obviously that's something that requires quick action. Is there authority for, at least for the state agencies, to repurpose funds, and is that an obstacle in order to address a threat rather than waiting for an appropriation, perhaps taking effect a year later?
I It kind of depends. Thank you for your question. It kind of depends on what the vulnerability is. Sometimes it's just a setting that needs to be turned off. Other times it's an old service that may be available to the public. So it kind of depends on what effort is required for mitigation. In cases where funding needs to be made available, we tend to recommend the state and local cybersecurity grant program that Ralph Johnson was just talking about. And additionally, we also tried to provide other free resources and connect folks with other system administrators kind of out in the community to see, is there anything that I can use that I have currently that I don't have to go spend money to get? So we try to identify free or low-cost opportunities as much as we can. And then where we cannot, we typically point folks to grant programs and partnering with other organizations where they can and exploring contracts with their service providers to see if those can expand.
And if I can add to that, as she mentioned, if it's something that does require a funding allocation and there are no funds available, there are no emergency funds that I'm aware of, that if a situation is that critical, we look at the infrastructure. We take a look at the other technological controls and find ways to apply what we call compensating controls. So we may use something, for example, like micro-segmentation, and we would put in, and sometimes this can be very difficult, but we would put in controls that only allow those other systems to contact that vulnerable system that must contact that system. So we'd make sure that that has no connectivity to the internet, for example, that only those people, individuals and systems and entities and processes that must communicate with that vulnerable system can do so. So there are ways to put in mitigating controls that may cost a little bit of money, may not cost anything except staff time to sort it out. There are a lot of ways around it, and then work with that agency to monitor that system for impending threats and attempted exploits.
And if I can follow up, then how nimble is your grant program?
The SLCGP grant is a 4-year grant. We are now in year 3 of that 4-year program. The funds are released by the federal government once a year. And in the first 2 years, as I mentioned, we have invested $11 million of federal and state money. This year, I believe we're getting almost $3 million for the third cycle, and I don't know what it is for next year. So it's not terribly nimble. It is a once a year application process. We get through the process as quickly as we possibly can. Going through the red tape of CISA and FEMA is sometimes a bit of a challenge, but we try to get it out there as fast as we can. The one thing that has happened in Washington State is we are very efficient at getting the money out to the agencies implementing their programs. For the first year, and I don't have the numbers specifically in my head, but of the grants that were issued in the first year, I believe that something along the lines of 75% have actually completed their projects. And for the second year, it's, I believe, somewhere in the 30% range, which is unheard of nationwide.
Thank you. Nationwide is relative to my final question, which is how does the SAO look at how Washington State compares and local governments compare in terms of the percentage of systems or controls, I should say, that are not implemented yet or are only partially implemented?
Thank you for your question. Just for a follow-up question, are you saying how Washington local governments compare to other states throughout the nation kind of thing?
Right.
Okay.
In general, so, about a third of systems or controls were not fully implemented, it looked like, and less so at state government level. How do we compare in terms of our preparation?
That's a great question. Honestly, it relies heavily on the relationships that we've built with these local governments to have us come in and evaluate their IT security program and to share those results with us. We don't necessarily have that information readily available because that would be information that would be more closer to the vest, because you don't necessarily want your local government from Virginia or something that says we have 80% of our controls not in place. So there really isn't any sort of audit shop that uses this criteria to the degree that we do, where we can kind of compare. So it's very much kind of an apples to oranges look. That, and there is also the fact of we use different frameworks for different audits, and the different frameworks have different takes on what should be implemented. Everybody's kind of got their own variation. So unless we were all approaching with the same exact framework, then we could do some kind of analysis. But as far as I know, kind of what's boding well for Washington State is that the SAO has a really comprehensive cyber audit program, which is not something that we really see in other states, which can kind of help facilitate that information sharing among local governments within our region. So I hope that helps address your question.
Absolutely, it addresses it.
If I may, I can also state that that in all my interaction, I interact with all other 50 state CISOs, or 49 state CISOs and 6 territorial CISOs, and in no instance have I ever heard any of them talk about a program similar to I-900. I believe that nationwide, this program is very unique, very innovative, and very supported by the state and our local entities. I hear that our local entities actually come to these people and ask to be audited as opposed to going the other way sometimes. And that's a great vote of confidence for them.
Indeed it is, and both in vote of confidence in having the independent audits by the state auditor's office, and the willingness of the local governments to put themselves up for review. Yeah. I don't have any other question. Representative Scott, you're good? Does anyone want to testify who's present here today? All right. I want to thank you very much, as said, for the great work of the SAO for this, and Mr. Johnson for the state team and its terrific work. Thank you very much. Okay, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.